What you are about to see is something I can assure you that you won't find anywhere else after all. I am the only creator who not only read all the novels but also plans to narrate the events of the most important ones for your enjoyment. And I don't mean just narrating with random fan art and unrelated backgrounds, but narrating with custom gifs of each character from the series to create a setting as faithful as possible. Obviously, it won't be identical to the anime, but it is what it is. Do I sound arrogant? Maybe, but what can I say, guys? I'm at a point in my life where I feel like Subaru after the scene in Arc 6 that everyone is waiting for. Today I want to talk to you about a character who unfortunately has already finished her cycle, but at the same time, I think the general audience only knows the culmination of this character in the anime and doesn't know everything she went through to reach the end of her path. I'm talking about Elsa Granhiert, the Bowel Hunter, and the reason for your private moments when you watch the first episode of Re:Zero. Believe it or not, the events of the first and second seasons only covered 30% of everything she did in her life. What's more, I bet you didn't know that a large part of the lore we know about Conejotako is thanks to her. And that's because she has 2 long novels set in that country, the country that half the fandom wants the author to explore soon. Another equally interesting thing is that after having tried to kill Emilia, she continued to have roles in side stories, in novels that took place far from Subaru's eyes. Believe me, I will cover all the events she experienced, from her chronologically oldest novel to her most recent mention in what would eventually be a 6th season. Today, I want to pay this tribute to Elsa. This video is the 3rd part of a series of videos I make where I talk about the complete life of Elsa Granhiert, but I have made these videos so that you can understand what happens without the need to watch the other parts. And on this occasion, we will talk only about the side stories that happen after episode 1 of the anime. Welcome to the biggest video about the gorgeous Elsa Granhiert on the entire internet. But before we continue, I would like to comment on something quickly. You see, it seems that the author will soon release an additional novel about Elsa, one that, although it hasn't been released yet, has already given a hint about what it will be about. It is said that it will be a fight she had against Cecilis Segmund, the strongest man in the country of Wallachia. Obviously, Elsa will lose, but I still want to read that story. It can also be said that, canonically, that novel already happened, it just needs to be narrated in detail. I think the most confusing thing is trying to establish in which year this happened, but that is already the author's job to clarify when he publishes his version. And now we move on to the 3rd and final part of Elsa's story. I want you to understand that by this 3rd part, I mean all the stories that take place during and after episode 1 of the anime. Fortunately, the ones coming up are shorter, so this last section won't take very long. The first story we have to consider about Elsa is the one called Felt-chan's Job, which takes place just hours before Felt steals the insignia from Emilia. This is a story that mostly focuses on the thoughts Felt had before robbing the candidate. In fact, I talk about it in this video you see on the screen, but the only thing that matters for this video and for Elsa is the part where we see how Elsa negotiates with Felt for the theft and promises her a payment of 10 holy coins. After that, the events where Subaru arrives, ruins Elsa's plans, and saves Emilia would happen. But Reinhard also stepped in during this situation and seriously wounded Elsa, so she is forced to run away. Well, there is a side story that tells us how Elsa was able to escape, even though Reinhard warned the guards about her. And honestly, it's an interesting story because it shows us a side of Meili's power that few people know about, and it went like this. Did you know that this interesting illustration of Elsa from a light novel revealed something important about Meili? After Elsa lost to Reinhard, the capital's slums were placed on high alert. The guards were hunting for the assassin based on her physical description while looking down at the citizens with contempt. In the middle of all this commotion, Meili, a young girl with blue braids, moved lightly through the gloomiest areas. The little girl slipped into an old hideout until she found a body covered in red inside one of the rooms. The red body turned out to be Elsa Granhiert, who sat up as soon as she heard the girl enter. Despite having been easily defeated, the woman seemed ecstatic over the aftermath of the encounter on her body. Resigned, Meili agreed to listen to the story while insisting on tending to Elsa's severe wounds. As she stripped off her destroyed clothes, a vertical wound was revealed that defied her usual regeneration abilities. Meili questioned if the one responsible was the Sword Saint, which was confirmed by a visibly thrilled Elsa. The assassin recounted how, even though the knight didn't use his legendary weapon, she felt completely powerless against his strength. Furthermore, she adds that for some reason, the wounds caused by that man take a long time to heal. Meili watched with incredulity at her companion's joy after such a crushing defeat. She admitted she always thought Elsa would never lose. Elsa reminded her that she had already gone through something similar against the strongest warrior of the Wallachian Empire, though at least on that occasion, she managed to kill the hostage. While she told this story, the healing was performed using water slug mucus, a substance Mei Li applied knowing that Elsa's physiology would withstand the poison. After the treatment, they needed to get clean clothes to move around without suspicion. Elsa simply entered a house, and instantly, Mei Li began to hear the sound of distant screams. A short while later, Elsa walked out wearing baggy men's clothes. Mei Li sighed because she would have to clean off the soaked-in blood. Soon after, the two were walking down the main street under a different appearance. Somehow, Mei Li is able to use parts of witch beasts to alter the color of her hair and eyes, effectively evading the wanted posters. Elsa, sporting men's clothes and a seductive figure, even managed to get a young guard to offer to escort them without ever suspecting their identity. During the journey, Mei Li reprimanded her for her unnecessary brutality in getting the clothes. But Elsa simply joked that since those men weren't gentlemen, she had to kill them. Although they planned to go into hiding, the discovery of a magic letter from their employer changed their plans. The message, which disintegrated after being read, pointed to the mansion of Margrave Roswell Mathers as the next objective, and it was a task for Mei Li alone. To Elsa's frustration, the orders dictated that she had to rest while the girl executed the job. With resignation, Elsa promised to wait while she did some knitting. She asked Mei Li what kind of plushie she would like this time. Mei Li simply told her to make a plushie of the thing she was thinking about most at that moment. And so, Elsa would knit a Reinhard plushie that would later be mentioned in another novel, but that's a story you don't know. After this, Elsa is asked to rest and calm down for a while, and during this time, the events at the mansion took place, meaning the events of Arc 2. You know, when Subaru met the twins and Rem falls in love with him. Something interesting that maybe very few people noticed is that Mei Li disappears from one moment to the next, and the excuse given is that her family members took her away in the middle of the events of this arc. And the side story that I will play for you now reveals who this sudden family member was, and it went like this. Did you know that Elsa is so talented at sewing that she occasionally gives custom handmade plushies to Mei Li? This might be hard to believe since Elsa is such a ruthless assassin, but one of the novels describes how she actually had this hobby whenever she wasn't out on a mission. After Mei Li failed her task of bringing chaos to the mansion of a certain strange noble, Elsa picked her up and escorted her away from Arlem village through the mountains. It's said that Elsa Granhiert's laughter echoed through the trees with a joy that stood in sharp contrast to her young companion's indignation. Mei Li Portrout, exhausted and with her cheeks puffed out in anger, scolded her. She found it incomprehensible that the Bowl Hunter could be in such a good mood while they were literally fleeing for their lives in the middle of the dark. Elsa, brushing it off, mocked the girl's over-reliance on her pets and pointed out that a little exercise would do her some good, even admitting she enjoyed that the roles were reversed, since last time it was Mei Li who came to her rescue. Now it was Elsa's turn to help Mei Li. However, the strain of mountain trekking in the wrong shoes finally wore out the little Mei Beast tamer, who collapsed onto a log demanding a break. While catching her breath, some Mei Li expressed her frustration over how her woolgarms had been incinerated by an eccentric mage who rained fire from the sky. Elsa then commented on how interesting that man must be to pull off such a feat, and when asked if she felt any attraction toward the sorcerer, she coldly clarified that her only interest lay in people's beautiful insides. But speaking of strong people, Elsa remembered something and proceeded to give Mei Li a small hand-knitted plushie representing the Sword Saint. Mei Li, though she accepted the gift with affection, couldn't help but mock her companion's strange fixation on recreating, in such detail, the man who had almost ended her life. Later, noticing that the little girl's feet were hurting, Elsa offered to carry her on her back to pick up the pace. Despite Mei Li's initial complaints about the rough movement, the physical pain forced her to accept the gesture, and she soon found herself swept up in a frantic sprint through the forest. Unfortunately, their escape was interrupted when a surviving Volgarm from Mei Li's pack emerged from the bushes with a hostile attitude. While Elsa was ready to execute the beast, Mei Li stepped in, using her power to instinctively subdue it. With an unusual sense of responsibility, the girl warned the monster to hide in the mountains and rebuild its pack far away from that flying mage. She then admitted to Elsa that it pained her to send the creatures to a certain death because of a mistake she had made herself. After ensuring the pack's escape, Mei Li ordered Elsa to keep moving, promising herself internally that the next time she helped Elsa, she would ask for a Volgarm plushie as payment. However, that next time would never come, as Elsa would die in the very next mission, and Mei Li would carry that regret with her in another novel. But that's a story you don't know yet. As we can see, interesting things are told in this story, things that match what we have seen from Elsa, her passion for making dolls and her care for Mei Li. Even though Elsa and Mei Li are assassins, I always liked this kind of dynamic they carried. It helped Elsa back then to be the younger sister of the Featherroom girls because, thanks to that experience, she was now able to act as a sort of older sister for Mei Li. Then, the other novel that would talk about her would be a novel set during the events of Arc 4, or the second season. You know, it happens right at the time when Subaru was going through the events of the Sanctuary, and it's a chat that Meili and Elsa have, which I covered in a short for your enjoyment, and it went like this. Did you know there's a novel that tells the story of how Elsa and Meili first met? The most interesting part is that this story will likely be featured in the upcoming 4th season. They say the first time Elsa saw her was in a field of corpses. In the middle of slaughtered beasts stood a little girl, filthy and covered only by a scrap of cloth. The strange thing was that the bodies surrounding her were those of beasts, not humans, and the one who had killed them all was a teenage Elsa. Despite the knife she carried, she possessed a certain wicked allure. She told the girl she wasn't going to hurt her, as she'd been ordered to bring her back alive. The little one stared at her with pure hatred. Elsa commented that with that attitude, she looked like a beast princess. The little girl only growled. Right then, the king of the forest appeared. Elsa, far from being scared, licked her lips and remarked how fabulous it was to have such a big friend. The beast attacked, but Elsa dodged and, with a single slash, took off its front leg. As she prepared to finish it off, she whispered that she wanted to see what kind of bowels it had. The fight was completely one-sided. Elsa dodged and severed parts of the beast, which could only moan, begging for death. While rummaging through its guts, the young woman asked the little girl if she could call another one just so she could compare their entrails. The girl didn't answer. She just glared with hate, knowing she had lost her best weapon. Elsa walked toward her and picked her up gently. She told her not to worry, that she was taking her back. The little one struggled and began to bite her neck in a rage, while Elsa simply remarked that being hated that much wasn't very pleasant. But in her current state, the girl's bites only tickled. Years later, the little one, now known as Meili, pressed her lips against Elsa's neck. Elsa asked what she was doing. Meili said she was remembering the time she tried to kill her by biting her like that. Elsa smiled and said it was like being bitten by a puppy, to which Meili reminded her that she had killed all her beasts, so she still wanted to kill Elsa in the worst way possible. Elsa said that she'd made it clear from the start she wasn't going to kill her. Meili shot back, asking who would ever believe her after seeing her tear her beasts apart. The assassin simply commented on how much Meili had changed, how she now spoke properly instead of just making guttural sounds. The younger girl just said it wasn't fair for Elsa to speak so lightly to someone who was suffering. Elsa looked at her, confused. She insisted that if she hadn't gone looking for her, she would have missed out on knowing her, adding that she felt Meili was like her sister now. Meili was left speechless by the unusual display of affection and called her a weirdo. Elsa nodded, saying it was precisely because they were both weirdos that they could be together like this. Then, stroking the braid that the girl had made for her, Elsa said she'd gotten much better at it. Meili told her that if she kept exposing her neck, she'd end up biting her to death. Elsa remarked that she trusted Meili wouldn't really bite anymore, to which Meili asked if Elsa still wanted to cut her stomach open. Elsa thought about it and replied that she was still interested in her insides, but not enough to destroy what they had. After a silence, Meili moved closer to her on the sofa. From a distance, without the stench of blood, they looked like two sisters chatting in peace. And it's this memory that will complicate things for Subaru in the 4th season. The most curious thing is that the break time of episode 11 of the 2nd season added a new scene where Elsa talked a bit more in detail about what she thought of Subaru. She says she dislikes that boy because of his eyes, and when she is asked what she means regarding Subaru's look, she just says the protagonist doesn't look like someone who accepts or resists death, but rather someone who feels that death is not the end for him. In fact, she adds Roswal to that same category. In case you don't get it, Elsa says this because of Subaru and Roswal's ability to, so to speak, be reborn. Subaru with his return by death power, and Roswal thanks to his descendants. It's curious how, in a way, Elsa sensed the secrets of both characters. Even though there is still one more side story left that closes Elsa's life, in reality, there is something important that the anime skipped and helps us better understand her powers. I'm talking about the fact that canonically, Elsa's end wasn't in her defeat against Garfield, but rather she, or better said what was left of her, stayed alive wandering around the mansion. Unfortunately, by that time Garfield was no longer around to handle the situation, and it was up to Subaru to deal with Elsa's remains while dodging the guilty Lo, who wasn't completely burned down by the fire Otto started, and it went like this.
Did you know that Elsa didn't actually die in her duel against Garfield? Well, technically yes, and at the same time no. I say this because the novel tells how the remains of the Bubble Hunter kept moving to count down Subaru even after her defeat against the Sanctuary's shield. It all starts in the middle of the fierce mansion fire, right when Subaru unconsciously covered himself in miasma to enter the mansion one last time. It is said that he hears a wet sound in the main hallway and sees Elsa emerge from the flames, holding her black kukri.
Subaru licks his lips, forgetting his discomfort while leaning on the strength of his valuable allies like Otto, Ram, Garfield, Petra, Frederica, and Amelia to keep standing firm. Noticing her dark, empty eyes, Subaru understands that this thing is no longer Elsa, but a soulless corpse driven by an endless bloodlust, dragging her wrecked lower body through the raging fire. Seeing that she is crawling slowly, Subaru decides to leave her behind to keep looking for Beatrice, but the corpse reacts instantly, slashing the steps with her blade to claim his life. Subaru runs desperately toward the upper floors, fleeing from the thick black smoke that hurts his lungs. Upon reaching the third floor, a guilty low emerges, the very one because of which Otto set the mansion on fire. It appears from the flames, horribly burned and without a mane, to attack him with its lethal claws. Subaru dodges the deadly hit by rolling on the floor, but Elsa's corpse appears and fiercely attacks the beast for getting in her way, cutting off one of its hind legs with a single slash. The wound draws black blood and the beast fights back with its snake tail, but the undead woman dodges it with inhuman reflexes and decapitates it at the base, unilaterally wrecking the monster. Subaru takes advantage of the distraction to kick open the doors of the top floor, looking for a safe exit. At this moment in the anime, Subaru would head to the last door standing in the mansion, while Elsa's remains murdered the animal. When Elsa finishes with this beast, her flesh is destroyed beyond her healing capacity, while at the same time she holds the beast's heart in her left hand. Guided by a blind obsession and an endless sense of duty, the corpse reaches the door at the back, the very same door Subaru had reached moments before, and launches a brutal attack to slice her prey. However, upon breaking the door, oxygen suddenly rushes into the underground tunnel, where incomplete combustion was taking place. Upon making contact with the air, a devastating backdraft explosion is generated, a physical phenomenon that the corpse, stripped of reason, could not predict in any way. The flames engulf Elsa's body, reducing her decaying remains to ashes immediately. The fire expands through the underground hallway and the spiral staircase, destroying the study and completely consuming the doors of the Rosewall mansion, sealing the tragic end not only of the building, but also of the Bowl Hunter. But that is a story you already know. Afterward, Elsa would die for good, but there would still be a reflection on her life given by Meili, a reflection where she shows us that Elsa had actually already lost the will to live. Now I will play the short that talks in detail about this, but I ask you to stay, because there is still an important last detail about Elsa to mention, but the short starts like this. Did you know that Elsa's death had emotional consequences for Meili? Unfortunately, the anime couldn't show it entirely, and although it made an attempt, it failed to capture every detail. Shortly after the mansion burned down, and while Subaru was dealing with the Great Rabbit alongside Amelia and Bayako, Meili was searching for something among the charred remains of the estate. She was looking for something she knew wasn't there, a fact pointed out to her by Garfield, who stood with his back turned while keeping watch over her. Despite his threats to finish her off if she tried anything, the girl knew it was just a bluff and that the boy wasn't actually going to hurt her. Then, he asked her if this search was actually helping her in any way. Moved by his rough empathy, Meili closed her eyes and gave a melancholic smile. She knew she wouldn't find any trace of the person she was looking for. Suddenly, she remembered how she had once asked Elsa if she was immortal. Meili had assumed so after seeing her regenerate from all kinds of wounds. But Elsa simply explained that after being sold as a child slave in Gustako, her buyer had used a cursed art on her, turning her into a cursed doll. A curse that prevented the subject from dying until they had killed their target. So it wasn't that she was immortal, but rather, in her own words, she was someone incapable of dying. Puzzled by the way Elsa gave her answer, Meili asked her if she wished she could just die already. The older woman, tilting her head in genuine confusion, assured her she had no desire to die. She enjoyed the smell of blood and torn flesh far too much. That curse allowed her to feel alive over and over again. Then, stroking Meili's head with blood-stained hands, Elsa tenderly teased her, saying she looked so sad and lonely, worrying about her death. Angered by the blood matting her hair, Meili scolded her for being so careless with her appearance and dragged her by the hand to flee the area, warning her that she needed to focus more or she would end up dying first, leaving Elsa alone with her immortal body. Elsa only gave a mysterious smile on that occasion. Back in the present, standing before the smoking ruins of the mansion, Meili held back the pain. Elsa had survived stabbings and broken necks, but she had finally been reduced to ash. Only then did Meili realize that Elsa had lied to her that day and actually wanted to die. After all, for someone who only felt alive when killing others, it meant she found her own life worthless. At the very least, dying there, fighting until her last breath, must have been a blessing. Having finished remembering Elsa, Mei Li thanked Garfield and told him she was satisfied now. The boy looked at her with irritation and told her bluntly that if she wanted to cry, he wasn't going to stop her. Mei Li didn't understand why he said it, but feeling the sting in her eyes, she looked up at the sky to hide her face and let her repressed emotions finally overflow. Garfield remained silent, allowing the girl to cry. It's said they never spoke of what happened that night again, though this wouldn't be the last time Mei Li thought about all this, as later on, in a novel featuring Reinhardt and Volcanica, she would have to think about her old companion once more. But that's a story you don't know yet. To be honest, I don't have much to add to Mei Li's final reflection on Elsa's life. I think if a person stops looking for excitement or goals in their life and just lives by inertia, then maybe they aren't truly enjoying life like someone who does have a clear goal and knows the path to take. I think it must be very sad that you only find excitement through other people and not through yourself. But I don't want to start rambling anymore. Surely someone with more knowledge on these types of topics can explain my idea better than I can. I just want to finish this video now. I know that later on there is a story about Mei Li where she thinks about Elsa, but it's nothing that adds to Elsa's character itself. It's just specific mentions of the Bowel Hunter and nothing more. Elsa's story has already ended, and that makes me a bit sad because I feel like maybe it could have been expanded on a bit. I'm not saying they should forgive her and have her join the good guys, or maybe I only think this after reading all her novels, but I can't shake the feeling that something else was missing in her story. I know that technically she could be brought back to life if Felix used his power, but I prefer not to think about that. Now I will take the chance to answer some questions there are regarding her. Why did Elsa die if she was immortal? Elsa wasn't immortal, she was just someone with a very good healing power, and I find two explanations for her death, and I feel both are just as good. At least I made sure to discuss them with some people who I know, also read Elsa's lore, and didn't just watch this video. The first explanation is that Elsa's healing power had really already reached its limit in her fight against Garfield, and proof of that is that her blood and wounds stopped healing. Maybe you think the Elsa versus Garfield fight didn't last that long because we only saw a few minutes in the anime. But in reality, this fight was cut down and lasted longer than it seems. Time in which Garfield could have perfectly covered her in wounds that pushed her power to the limit. And of course, remember that a hit from Subaru is not the same as a hit from Garfield, who easily multiplies the impact and damage the protagonist could do by thousands of times. And this translates into a need for greater healing in the assassin's body. Also, it was influenced by the fact that Garfield recreated a memory of Elsa's. The memory of the first time she felt alive by discovering her passion for insides. Remember that Elsa wanted to die? Well, at this moment in the anime, she was already in her last seconds of life, and had just remembered her first murder, which gives off total vibes that she was already satisfied with her existence at that point, and that's why she let herself be killed. Also, it's not like Elsa shows a lot of respect for Capella, or feels the need to serve her. Let's remember that Elsa was threatened. What am I trying to get at with all this? Simple. Elsa no longer had the desire to keep living. She wanted to die, and she saw that even if she died, Mei Li would be safe. I think we can see a certain pattern. The second possible explanation is one that has to do with the origin of curses and authorities. In case you don't know, curses are attempts to recreate authorities, and since authorities get stronger the more the user gives up of themselves, see the case of Subaru using Betelgeuse's hand more efficiently with no recoil when entering madness, or the case of Petra who gave up more of her own things when using Klin's power. Well, you get what I mean. In Elsa's case, her novel confirms that the more conviction and desire to live she has, then her healing power will keep being exceptional. But we know Elsa didn't feel comfortable with her own life, and on top of that, seeing how her enemies save Mei Li probably took away one of the few things for which she could keep staying alive, protecting Mei Li from Capella. And to this we have to add that in the Apocalypse Girls novel itself, it is said that a doll's healing power starts to fail when they truly start to need and want their target's death. And if we remember her last moments of life, Elsa had kind of become obsessed with Garfield, at least enough to give him some pretty intense messages. I also think another variable that is present in both cases and helped her defeat was a habit of hers that worked against her, her sadism. You see, Elsa is the type who likes to play with her prey, and this worked against her. It was because she played against her opponents in the first arc that eventually made Reinhardt arrive and caused her to lose. It was because she played with Petra and Frederica that eventually Garfield arrived to stop her, and this is a constant in her encounters. The fact that you start playing around makes you inefficient, because you start revealing your cards bit by bit, and that in a duel against an equal like Garfield or Reinhardt ended up costing the Bowel Hunter dearly. While I was editing this, a friend gave me another interesting perspective on the reason for Elsa's death. A reason I can't go into detail about, but will leave on screen in case someone wants to take a screenshot and read it. I think the most interesting thing she contributed is a detail that even I didn't notice. No matter how much Elsa is almost immortal, that doesn't change the fact that her human body wasn't conceived and created to operate in that way. This would bring certain biological limitations to her power, and the logic of this is explained in the text I'm showing on screen. A text that, I repeat, I invite you to read. Anyway, let's just leave it at Elsa's power at this moment stopped working for several reasons. Reasons that neither I nor other readers fully understand, and I think the most direct thing would be to ask Tape in a Q&A session. I would do it myself, but I am already very tired. Another question I usually see regarding the character is her appearance as a kind of ghost in the 3rd season. There are 2 answers for this. A long answer that has something to do with the worldview Garfield handles, which I can't cover here in an Elsa video. Who knows? Maybe when I make the video on all of Garfield's novels, I'll answer it there. But I can give you the short answer, as it involves Elsa. Elsa really died in the 2nd season, but because it was Garfield who killed her, the boy's mind still remembered that, and that's why when he starts to have his emotional lows, the memory of Elsa appears to torture him psychologically. And with this, I finish everything related to Elsa in the novels to this day. This video took way longer than I planned, and I still owe the EX1 video, which will also be long. Unfortunately, right now we are at the peak of the 4th season, and disconnecting for many weeks just to make a single video doesn't feel productive. When will I make the EX1? When season 4 ends, since these days I want to focus on making other videos, but I can assure you that the EX1 video will be on a higher level than this one. Thanks for making it to this part of the video, and if you watched it all the way through, I would appreciate it if you answer the following. Did this review of Elsa's life manage to change your perspective on her? If it did, tell me how it happened. On my part, I think my thoughts on the Bowel Hunter were already reflected throughout all of this, but I'm always interested to know if I caused the same effect on people, so don't hesitate to comment on it. By the way, I'll leave you my Instagram. I don't upload anything about ReZero there, but every now and then I like to share pieces of my day-to-day life or answer messages, so feel free to follow me if you want to. But that has been all for today. Thanks for playing this video, thanks for staying until the end, and thanks for watching.